Hello, and if your name is Jürgen, hello Jürgen. My name is irrelevant, and I'd like to be able to tell you how to make yourself many times cleverer, better looking and healthier than you are currently. What I can tell you is that a lot of people ask me why, when there's so much pressure to screen scoutmasters and priests for sexual deviancy, nobody ever seems worried about gynecologists. And I always respond by saying, well, it's a bit like the answer to why prawns go off in an hour, but prawn crackers can last up to a year in a plastic bag in your warm pantry. But it's not a lot like that answer. The question I wish more people apart from representatives of the Australian Tax Office would ask me is, do you know what fly art is? And why, according to the paperwork currently before the courts, is it managed by this child in the Cayman Islands? I have spent some time, typically while my wife is telling me about her day, thinking about why nobody ever asks me about fly art, even when I've written letters asking them to ask me. And I've also spent periods wondering why, if I really want the opportunity to answer the big question, do you know what fly art is? Don't I just ask myself the question in much the same way I've heard my wife asking herself, why do I bother telling him about my day when he's clearly thinking about stupid fly stuff while I'm talking? The difference is, of course, that in my case, I have an answer. Do you know what fly art is? I ask myself. Well, it's a very good question. And the answer is, yes, I do. Of course, the real question, the one which will enable me to provide a more helpful and informative response is, what is fly art? And fortunately for you and me, I know the answer. Just as there are two sides to any interpretation of tobacco smoking research, there are two key parts to fly art. The first of these, often mistakenly referred to by dyslexics as part 2, is fly. This is a fly, and apart from the lawn mowing man and anteater, it is arguably the most sensibly described creature on the planet. In fact, if the logic behind naming the fly were applied universally, this would be a hop. This would be a sleep. These would be called carries. This would be a trumpet, and he would be a bolt. Apart from having taken ownership of the brand name every one of the other millions of creatures which fly would much prefer to own, especially the blue tit, the shag and the peacock, the fly is the quintessential Australian and should be the national animal, not the kangaroo. Most Australians are more likely to have tasted a kangaroo than touched one. And in the areas in which most Australians live, they're as rare as the Tasmanian tiger and famous Vietnam War veterans. Yes, there is only one thriving icon of our national persona, which is far more prevalent than all the cute and cuddly strangers venerated on our coinage and in our sanitised folklore. It's the indefatigably friendly, uninvited guest at countless barbecues from Darwin to Port Denison. It's the ultimate egalitarian, which has greeted boat people from Europe and elsewhere and met pop stars and visiting heads of state with identical enthusiasm and respect. It's the small, unignorable irritant which has distracted most of the nation's sporting greats. Don Bradman, Rod Laver, Greg Norman have never had their concentration challenged by an irksome kangaroo, an attention-seeking wombat or a thirsty koala, let alone having had to wave them away during crucial moments of international import. The fly is as pervasive as advertising, influenza, sunbaking and skin cancer, and every Australian spends much time, effort and money trying to avoid or destroy it. The fly is the fastest and most aerobatic creature in the massive and intensely competitive insect world. It carries more germs on its leg hairs than there are marsupials and sports haters on our island continent. It thrives, creating as many as 25 generations in a single season, wherever humans survive and cows defecate. Like us, the fly is as happy eating rubbish as it is dining on the finest finger food. And its vision is as sharp, for distances up to 900 millimetres, as the vast majority of our nation's leaders, past and present. It's time we recognise that the ubiquitous fly screen is not simply an enduringly fashionable window treatment. that the Australian salute has nothing to do with our proud military past or mock high regard for authority. And that despite what the spin doctor's misguiding Qantas might have us believe, there is no such thing as a bloody flying kangaroo. But it's not too late to change. The second element of fly art is, of course, art. There are three types of art. There's intelligent, intelligible art which communicates immediately at an intellectual and emotional level, and very rarely both. This elite art is produced by those with the talent and technique to use art as a medium of meaningful expression. Its practitioners include those who create horses which look like horses, who capture moments of intense feeling with the honesty of a camera and the forcefulness of a poet, and, in some very rare cases, produce their work in a way none of their predecessors has quite done before. Then there's art produced by those whose ideas are unclear and whose ability to convey them visually is limited, often severely. Much of this work is expressionistic, idealist, indecipherable, inaccessible, pretentious, and produced by commercially unsuccessful artists who regard their economic plight more as a measure of their vast share of creative integrity than of their pitiably limited ability. It's the art we all look at in galleries and then step away from without having changed our facial expression and without having been inspired to think about anything other than what the next one along will look like. And then there's fly art. Fly art is for those who regard work which results in them asking, "What the hell is that all about?" as a failure. It's for the discerning few who understand the principles of great design and love seeing them applied in everything they acquire. This is fly art, and it's for anyone who loves what Australia is and, at its best, stands for. It's for people who recognise that most art can't make them smile or laugh, and that fly art does. It's probably not going to match your carpet or your curtains unless they don't match either. Your rich friend's trophy partner will think less of you for hanging it on your wall, even in the toilet. Premium wine label devotees and Rolex wearers will hate it. And many others will find the idea of having dead Australian flies on your wall disgusting. But all these failings are what makes it so appealing, especially to weirdos like you. Which piece in the fly art gallery do you like most?